Very good evening.
Hello. Hello.
हॅलो सर, गुड इव्हनिंग. अभिषेक
हा, गुड
बोलतोय.
इव्हनिंग.
कशा आहात सर?
म्हणजे ठीक चाललंय.
येस येस.
हा. चष्मा काढावं का काय करावं? अंदाज येतो सगळ्या चेहऱ्या. त्याला काय करता येईल? असं बसू. अंदाज येतो चेहऱ्यावर जरा.
सर लाईट आहे ना मागे आपल्या, कदाचित त्याच्यामुळे.
राईट साइडला आहे. असं आहे.
हा हा, त्याच्यामुळे येतोय माझ्या मते.
इकडे बसू का? हे जरा चेहरा दिसेल.
हो.
हे आवाज का नाही येतो? आवाज का नाही येतो? आवाज नाही येते. हे काय आहे? करून
गई ना तेरे पास ऐसा कर तू क्या दिख रहा है हैं तो क्या दिख रहा किसने चल्लू ये मेरा अब नहीं दिख रहा. बोतल दिख रही होगी. क्या चक्कर है?
Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
त्यांनीच केलेले. हॅलो
हो सर.
हॅलो.
हो सर. सर आपण 5 मिनिटात सुरू करू.
ठीक आहे. हां ठीक आहे, नो प्रॉब्लेम.
ओके सर, आवाज तुमचा थोडासा ब्लर येतोय. थोडंसं चेकिंग करूयात.
येतोय
थोडासा ब्लर होता.
घुमतोय का आवाज? बर, मग काय करतात त्याला? एक मिनिट. हॅलो हॅलो, आता ऐकू येतं का व्यवस्थित?
सर
ऐकू येतंय का आता?
ऐकू येतंय पण आवाज आहे ना बरोबर नाही येत.
आवाज बरोबर येत नाही. मग आता एक मिनिट.
कोणत्या इंटरनेटने कनेक्ट झाले का?
मी आमचं BSNLचं आहे. रिलायन्स जिओचं बघू का?
माझा आवाज येतोय आपल्याला क्लिअर? माझा आवाज क्लिअर येतोय आपल्याला?
एक डिस्टर्बन्स आहे. माझं घे ना तिथलं डोंगल घे ना ते जिओचं. एक मी जिओचं हे करतो, त्याच्यावर शिफ्ट होऊन बघतो.
Okay, may I ask if you can, participants, if you can write about. Hello, is Vazis's voice is audible? Participants.
Hello.
All right. Okay. I think so. There seems some problem at my end, sir. No problem. We will carry on.
Hello. Surat.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Start with the session.
Let's wait for 2 more minutes. We'll start. So I think so. Let us start because there are 120 registrations. Only 73 participants have joined now. It's 5:05. So let us start, I guess.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, all the members. Welcome to virtual CP meet organized by Pune branch of WIRC. Today we have with us CA Sharad Vaze sir, seasoned speaker on on various topics. Today, he is going to take us through on professional ethics. Dear all members, as you are aware that hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, dear members, as you are aware that from 1st of July 20, there's going to be new professional ethics implementing. So it is our endeavor to keep you abreast with the latest development in professional ethics. So we take this opportunity and I would like to briefly introduce C.A. Sharad Vaze sir. Sharad Vaze sir is a fellow member of ICI. He is into practice since last 37 years, exclusively engaged into direct taxes. His partner in Sharad Vaze and Company, based in Pune. Besides, he is a postgraduate in commerce. He is also a law he has completed his law LLB. He is also graduate member of IC Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He was managing committee member at Pune branch in 1988 to 91, and he was chairman during the year 1991. He is a founder and life member of PCAS, Pune Chartered Accountant Society. He has written many articles on taxation, company law, banking, which are published in Economic Times, Taxman, and various news dailies. Then he is also written weekly replies to taxation issued asked by general public in Delhi Sapar. He is also faculty at various. He has been faculty at various seminars organized by ICI, ICSI, and different colleges. Also, he loves teaching. As such, he is retired as an associate professor from BMCC after 35 years teaching into costing and taxation. He is also author of taxation on 3 books on auditing, taxation, and costing for last year BCom students of Pune University. He has been a visiting faculty at National Insurance Academy Symbiosis Institute. Besides representation before ITAT on taxation appeals, he's been a counsel to more than 25 chartered accountants for their cases before disciplinary committees. That is the most important thing. So we are really fortunate to have you here for the virtual meeting. I would request you to take charge of the session and proceed with the session.
Thank you, Abhishek, for giving me this opportunity. In fact, this is the first time I'll be speaking on the net, so to say, as again the normal practice of speaking before the audience. Now, I can only add that whatever I'll be speaking for next 3 hours, which will be more pertaining to disciplinary proceedings as to the professional misconduct. And in that case, it should not be considered as a sermon from my side. I can only say that I am one amongst you. The only thing that, fortunately, I was never caught. That's why I can say like that. Because when we progress with the lecture, you'll realize that it is difficult to practice whatever I'll be speaking or whatever is expected from the professionals in reality. But at least we can minimize it. I'm not saying that we can eliminate it 100% because the cutthroat competition we are facing, every one of us. Now, as to the ethics, what I say, I have given 2 submissions or 2 statements for being circulated among the participants. One is regarding professional misconduct and regarding the first and second schedule to the Chartered Accountants Act, to which we are concerned. Now, ethics, what it means, really speaking, the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or how an activity is conducted. That is what the Oxford Dictionary says. And ethical means decent, fair, good, honest, just, moral, noble, principled, righteous, upright, and virtuous. All these adjectives are included in one word, that is ethical. And that's why if you look at the motto of our institute, which says, Ya Esha Sukteshu Jagrati, adopted from Kathopanishad, all of us are aware, when everyone is asleep, we are awake. So what we say that ethics is nothing but answerability to one's conscious person's inner mind. So that's why I said it is easier to advise, much easier to tell, but difficult to follow or practice. Even I may quote from Mahabharata, the most honest person, Dharmaraj, has to state about the word Narova Kunjurova. That means even he can't be 100% honest, whom we say that he is the most honest person. He has to say Narova Kunjurova. That means neither true nor false in that sense. So many of us consider that code of ethics is restrictive. It hampers the growth. In fact, it is incorrect. The code of ethics protects the profession, thereby it increases the members' professionals' credibility and respect. It distinguishes from business and profession. Just give one idea. Even in English language, it is always called a noble profession. It is never used the word noble business. I'm not saying that the businesses are not noble, but it's a normal English language usage where everyone calls noble profession rather than noble business. That means the businessmen are not noble. I'm not saying like that, please no. As to that is a distinction between business and profession. Then there has been a criticism about the laxity on the part of our institute in disposing the complaints and awarding the punishments. Generally, the punishment was either reprimand, suspension, or fine. The institute was not to be blamed, but the law was like that. Necessity was felt after the Satyam scam, and the law was drastically amended after 2000 in 2006. Now, what has happened in 2006, or what was the procedure prior to 2006, which is outdated at the moment, but still it is relevant to know. Prior to 2006, if anyone makes a complaint in Form I with the institute, the complaint was referred to disciplinary committee directly. It will call for the concerned person, call for the complainant. After listening to both the parties, the committee will decide whether you are guilty or not guilty. After the committee has held guilty, the matter will travel to the entire council consisting of 35-40 members present at that time. Now in the council, the matter is heard again, only the part of guilt part, whether you are guilty or not guilty. If you can convince the council that the concerned chartered accountant is not guilty, then the council, like what we called it earlier, a system, in that case, the council will decide by majority whether a CA is guilty or not guilty. If the council decides that the chartered accountant is guilty, then the council will recommend the punishment. Please note, I'm using the word council will recommend the punishment, and the matter will be referred to the High Court of the state from which the concerned CA resides or a concerned CA has got an office. So ultimately, the High Court is to confirm the punishment, and either they reduce the punishment, rarely they have enhanced the punishment. Now in that case, a long period has gone by, because when the matter reaches to the High Court, normally it takes 10 to 15 years to decide, because really speaking, other than the institute or the concerned CA, no one else are interested. So it was lagging behind, and everyone was blaming that institute is lenient against the members. So the law was amended in 2006. So what we are going to see henceforth is the amended law and not the law earlier it was. Now the Chartered Accountants Act in Chapter 5, where it contains the definition of misconduct, and the word misconduct shall be deemed to include any act or omission specified in either schedules to that. The Act has got two schedules, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. However, the section authorizes the institute to inquire into any other misconduct of a member, thus giving wide powers to inquire the misconduct which is not necessarily related to the professional work. Generally, it is referred to conduct unbecoming of a professional. So there are two types of misconduct. One is a professional misconduct and the other one is a misconduct not relating to profession. So it was felt that the misconduct not relating to professional, how the institute comes into picture, the institute very well comes into picture. That means even if there is a, say, a person has been a part in the, say, nefarious gang or in the terrorist gang, if you are all are aware that one of our CA member was in terrorist gang, Yaqub Saeed, ultimately was hanged, but he was a chartered accountant. So in that case, it has got nothing to do with the profession per se, but under the, after 2006, he is unbecoming of a professional, and accordingly, it is a professional misconduct. Now, basically, to determine whether a misconduct is there or not, then there are various documents which are issued by the institute. The first one is the statements. Now, as to the statements, it says that statements are mandatory, hence must be followed while discharging the attest function. Therefore, deviation must be adequately disclosed. So statements have got binding effect. Accounting and auditing standards, mandatory in nature, obviously from the dates notified from the dates by ICAI. The standards override the statements. That means if there is a divergence between the statement and the standard, standard will have an overriding effect. The third is guidance note. The guidance note is recommendatory in nature. A member should ordinarily follow them except when he is satisfied that in the given circumstances, it may not be necessary to do so. The guidance note are recommendatory and not mandatory. So these three are to be taken into account whether a person has been gross negligent or not in deciding the professional misconduct. The Chartered Accountants Amendment Act 2006 came into force from 8th of August 2006. So all the cases filed thereafter will be as per the new law and not as per the previous law. Now, in section 21, after the amendment, a disciplinary directorate was established. Earlier, there was no disciplinary directorate at all. The director disciplined to give opinion as to whether a member is a prima facie guilty on the complaint or any information received by him. If guilty under first schedule, reference is to Board of Discipline. If guilty under second schedule or both the schedules, reference is to disciplinary committee. So what is the procedure as regards the complaint? The complaint is received by the institute in Form 1 or Form I. Now it has been eligible, it has been allowed to file the complaint online also from the last month. Fees are rupees 2,500. Once the complaint is received by the institute, then copy of that complaint is forwarded to the respondent. Respondent means a chartered accountant. Then explanation is received from the respondent. That explanation received from respondent is again forwarded to the complainant for his rejoinder. In this way, the complainant gives one more chance to give his resubmission or re-say for one more say as to the complaint. Then director discipline may call for additional information from both the complainant as well as the respondent. Then the director discipline decides whether the respondent is prima facie guilty under either of the schedules or other misconduct. Please note it is director discipline to determine whether a respondent, that is chartered accountant, is prima facie guilty or not. Underline the word prima facie. So if the director discipline finds the respondent not prima facie guilty, the matter is closed with the concurrence of Board of Discipline. So the first hurdle is director discipline. If he holds you guilty, then the next procedure will start. If the director discipline holds that you are not guilty, then the matter will not be continued. I have got one experience where the matter got concluded by the director of discipline himself. It was way back in 2009, one of our chartered accountant, who was also a director of a company, issued a check for the rent of the office premises, of the company for office premises. The check got bounced, unfortunately, and the matter was taken by the landlord against the company under 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. And in that, against the company also, along with company, the concerned signatory to the check, that chartered accountant, was also made a party. The Sessions Court, District Court, which is the court in Pune, passed the order for payment of 1,75,000 rent plus 10,000 fine, and the payment was made. The issue closed there itself. However, the concerned landlord filed a complaint with the institute saying that if a chartered accountant is guilty of anything which is punishable offense with imprisonment, please note that I use the word punishable offense, not punished. For imprisonment less than 6 months or more than 6 months, it is a professional misconduct. So you want to take the advantage of that provision, that since Negotiable Instrument Act section 138 is a criminal offense punishable with imprisonment, the concerned share should lose his membership. So he filed a complaint. When the matter was referred, the complaint was received by the concerned CA, I could reply that it was a criminal complaint. So criminal complaint is made on the day on which the check got bounced. It is not a civil complaint, it is not a continuing offense. So when the complaint was filed under that, the complaint was filed prior to 2006, and the amendment in 2006 has made any offense punishable with imprisonment as a professional misconduct. So that section is not applicable, that part is not applicable, because the Criminal Act has already taken place prior to 2006. So the law after 2006 is not applicable, and we gave references accordingly, and the Director Discipline closed the complaint at that stage itself, that the complaint is not maintainable because it was prior to 2006. Prior to 2006, this particular clause, offense punishable with imprisonment, was not there in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 of the Chartered Accountants Act. Then after the Director Discipline holds you prima facie guilty, then the matter is referred to Board of Discipline if it is a guilty under Schedule 1 or first schedule, and it is referred to Direct Disciplinary Committee if guilty under second schedule or both Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 simultaneously. Now coming back to Board of Discipline and Director Disciplinary Committee. Board of Discipline is constituted under Section 21A of the Chartered Accountants Act. It consists of 3 persons: an outsider, that is a person with experience in law and having the knowledge of disciplinary matters and profession, and 2 members of the council, of which one is a central government nominee. So the disciplinary committee, Board of Discipline, consists of 3 persons, 1 outsider, 1 central government nominee, and 1 central council member. So central government nominee from the central council, so both are central council member, that constitutes Board of Discipline. As to the disciplinary committee, consists of 5 members, president or vice president as presiding officer, plus 2 central council members and 2 nominees of the central government. So 2 central council members plus 2 nominees of the central government. Please note, these 2 nominees of the central government need not be the council members of the institute. They are rank outsiders. Just to give an example, when there was a case I had to argue before last year, the 2 outsiders were, one was retired member of the tribunal and one was the principal chief commissioner of income tax, Mumbai. So these were 2 outsiders, nothing to do with the council or nothing to do with institute. They were members of the disciplinary committee. So it consists of 5 members, president or vice president of the institute, 2 central council members, and 2 nominees of the central government. The nominees should have experience in the field of law, economics, business, finance, and accountancy, etc. Now thereafter, the disciplinary committee issues notices to the complainant as well as the respondent where to submit the paper book like we submit it before the tribunal, argue the case on facts as to the follow acceptance as to the accounting standards, auditing standards, whether they have been properly followed or not. And most of the times, if it is relating to purely on accounting aspects, then we have to convince that the issue falls within the accounting standards. I remember in one case where the complainant has filed a case against the respondent saying that in the net asset valuation method, the chartered accountant had not considered the value of goodwill in arriving at the value of shares. And for that, he has referred to accounting standard 8. It was wrongly referred to as 8. It was substituted by 26 as to the intangible properties. So the goodwill should have been valued or not in determining the net asset value. Now, if the goodwill is considered, then the value of shares will be more. If it is not considered, the value will be less. That is obvious. So we had to argue the case purely on accounting standard. And based on that, fortunately, we have got a study material for CA final students. In that case, there is a chapter on valuation of goodwill and valuation of shares. In that case, the institute has recommended in case of future profit, future maintainable profit. Now, in this particular company's case, they were only, this was the third year. All the previous 3 years were in losses, and it's very unlikely that in future also there'll be substantial profits. So there are no future maintainable profit. So we have not valued goodwill intentionally. We could do that. Besides, the one or more objection was we have a return of expenses on software development, whereas the concerned director was of the opinion that the software development expenses should have been capitalized. In that case, there would have been no losses, and that means there will be a profit. It was a case of 2002. At that time, we have got one book as to the notes to the accounts in listed companies published by one, I think Taxman or someone else. In that, we could get the details of about 12 companies which has treated, out of 12 companies, 9 companies have treated it as a revenue expenditure and only 3 companies have capitalized it. When we could produce that this is the generally accepted practices, the business committee accepted that research R&D expenses or the software development expenses need not have been capitalized. Therefore, there is no question of valuation of goodwill as well as capitalization of expenses, and therefore the whatever value that has been adopted is fairly adopted. So the board discipline committee has held the concerned CA as not guilty. So from both the sides, the arguments takes place. Then the board of discipline or the direct disciplinary committee to give a report on its finding as to the guilt. The disciplinary committee or board of discipline gives the finding that Mr. XYZ respondent is guilty under clauses 5, 7, etc. of Schedule 1 to the Chartered Accountants Act or Schedule 2 to the Chartered Accountants Act. Then one more hearing is given to the concerned chartered accountant, only the question of punishment. Like what happens in our criminal cases also nowadays, the court holds a concerned person accused as guilty, and then separate argument takes place on the quantum of punishment. In the same manner, the board of discipline or disciplinary committee holds a chartered accountant guilty, and a separate hearing takes place for the determination of punishment. So two separate parts, like in the criminal cases also. The orders passed by a board of discipline or disciplinary committee are appealable to appellate authority. The appellate authority for all the 3 institutes, ICAI, ICSI, and Institute of Cost Accountants of India, is common for all the 3 institutes, and the office of the appellate authority is in the Indraprastha State. It is our institute office only. The ICAI member, that is the respondent, can make an appeal to the appellate authority. However, if the director discipline has held a respondent prima facie guilty, and the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee holds that a member is not guilty, then Director Discipline can file appeal to the appellate authority against the findings of Board of Discipline or disciplinary committee. However, there is a rider to it. The Director Discipline can file an appeal to the appellate authority if and only if Central Council authorizes the Director Discipline to file an appeal. So if the Central Council does not authorize the Director Discipline to file an appeal, then no appeal will lie from the institute side to the appellate authority. Please note, in this case, the complainant has no right whatsoever to file an appeal. For example, if a complainant has made a complaint against a chartered accountant and the disciplinary committee holds a chartered accountant guilty, but only the punishment given was reprimand, whereas complainant was expecting that at least he should lose his 3 months, 6 months of his membership. And the Director Committee has given him only the reprimand. So complainant wants to approach the appellate authority, and there are n number of decisions by the appellate authority that complainant cannot approach the appellate authority. Who can approach the appellate authority? Only the respondent, if he wants to make an appeal against the order passed by the Board of Discipline or Direct Disciplinary Committee, or the Director Discipline with the authorization from the Central Council. Only these two persons can appeal to the appellate authority, otherwise no appeal is maintainable. Appeal is to be filed within 90 days of the order. In all these cases, what are the principles that goes while making the inquiry by the Board of Discipline or Disciplinary Committee? Action for misconduct can be initiated either on receiving a complaint or information from any source, or so motu action by counsel is also possible. So there are 3 sources for a complaint, for action against a CA. First is by the complainant. So any person wants to make a complaint to the institute can make a complaint by paying a fee of rupees 2,500 by demand draft. Or the information can be given to the institute, and the institute can go ahead on the basis of information against the chartered accountant. Normally, the information is given by the governmental authorities against a chartered accountant. They do not want to formally make a complaint. They leave it as a information. Information can be given by, say, Minister of Corporate Affairs or Register of Companies or other ministries also, wherever a chartered accountant they feel that has not acted with reasonable care and skill. In that case, it is on the basis of information a complaint will proceed. Or institute on its own also can initiate disciplinary proceedings against the member of the institute. Now, in arguing the cases before the committee, now the council is not concerned with the complainant's behavior or conduct. Many times it is argued from the chartered accountants that the complainant himself is not reliable, or he himself is doing illegal business, or he himself is not upright. Therefore, his complaint should not be viewed seriously. There are various decisions. The institute or the committee has got nothing to do with the behavior of the complainant. Complaint once lodged cannot be ordinarily withdrawn except with the permission of Board of Discipline or Disciplinary Committee. So suppose a person has filed a complaint and later on there is a settlement or a compromise, or the complainant realizes that he has mistakenly made a complaint and he gives in writing that he wants to withdraw the complaint. The complaint could not be withdrawn. Complaint cannot be withdrawn like that. It can be withdrawn except when so authorized by a Board of Discipline or Disciplinary Committee. Committee has authority to punish individual member and not the firm or an outsider. the Board of Discipline or Disciplinary Committee can give a sentence or give a punishment against the individual member against whom a complaint has been received. Institute cannot make a punishment to all the partners of the firm. It is not against the firm. It is not against outsider of the firm. Outside of the firm, that means if there is a chartered accountant employed with the chartered accountant's firm, and if the chartered accountant makes a mistake, employee CA makes a mistake, and for it the partner says that I'm okay, but my employee has made a mistake who is also CA, so he should also be taken to task. No, if the complaint is against the signatory, then the outsiders, other partners, other chartered accountants, even though they are directly or indirectly concerned with the complaint, they are not to be punished. The complainant intends to withdraw the complaint or does not pursue it or remains absent. The complainant has filed a complaint, it intends to withdraw it. We have seen it earlier, with the permission of committee, it can be withdrawn. If he does not pursue it or remains absent, the CA can very well say the complainant has filed a complaint, has not turned up thereafter. That means he is not interested in continuing with the complaint or following the complaint, so I should be absolved. Now, the respondent is not automatically absolved by non-attendance by the complainant. The council takes the complaint to its logical conclusion by stepping into the shoes of the complainant. That means if complainant shows any disinterest or doesn't remain present at the time of hearing, or if he wants to withdraw it, it is solely at the discretion of the disciplinary committee or board of discipline. If the complainant doesn't want to follow, it doesn't matter, the institute will make the subsequent issue. The time duration, complaint to be filed within 7 years from the date of occurrence. Please note it is 7 years from the date of occurrence. It is quite long a period. And that is why I think our institute requires that we should keep the records of our clients for minimum period of 8 years. Then if there is a loss suffered by the complainant, and that's why he has filed a complaint with the institute, and suppose subsequently the respondent chartered accountant has made good the loss suffered by the complainant. Suppose on account of wrong share valuation, the complainant has suffered a loss of ₹1 lakh, and the respondent CA pays him 1 lakh rupees to the complainant. That means there is no loss at all. That will not absolve the concerned respondent chartered accountant. The complaint will continue. The complainant need not have to prove that he is aggrieved or has suffered a loss. That means there is nothing we can argue that there is a complaint is fictitious or is only academic, or that complainant has not suffered anything, but he has just to harass me, he has filed a complaint. That will not determine the outcome of the committee proceedings. Unfortunately, it is not related for disposal of a complaint. Then who are the complainants? Naturally, the user of our services, namely clients, financial institutions, banks. But in between clients, mostly the complaints have arisen on account of disputes between directors of a private company or disputes between the partners of a partnership firm. Most of the complainants from the company point of view are on account of dispute between the directors. I got occasion to deal with 2-3 such cases where a chartered accountant, although in law it is said that the company shall prepare the balance sheet, all of us are aware that we practically prepare the balance sheet, and it was given to a director for signature, and the director assured the concerned chartered accountant that I will take the signature of other director and I will give it back to you. Why don't you sign it right now? The concerned CA has signed the balance sheet, profit and loss account, financial statement. As all of us are aware that the balance sheet must be signed by at least 2 directors, and then it is to be given to the auditors for the purpose of auditing. So signature of 2 directors is mandatory. Signature of 1 director and a chartered accountant, obviously, it is a professional negligence. And in 2-3 cases, I think I may inform you that from Pune itself, I am aware that 2-3 senior chartered accountants have been held guilty for professional misconduct, having signed the balance sheet with only 1 signature of a director. So henceforth, please take care that whatever the time may be, short or whatever the situation might be, do not sign any balance sheet either of a cooperative society or a company or a partnership firm unless what the statutory requirement is to be signed by 2 directors. Then only put your signature as an auditor. Never put signature with 1 sign of a director. Again, I may give one example. About 2-3 months back, or rather 6 months back, I had occasion to deal with of a cooperative society where the secretary signed the balance sheet and took the signature of a chartered accountant, and he went to the society office to obtain the signature of a chairman and treasurer. Both refused to sign the balance sheet. The chairman was wise enough. He said that, let me have the balance sheet, I will go through it and then I will give you a signature. The chairman kept the copy of it. After 2 days or 3 days, he filed a complaint with the institute that the CA has signed the balance sheet without the signature of chairman, secretary, and treasurer of the cooperative society. I had a chance to argue this particular case. Fortunately, I could argue one aspect that under the Companies Act, it is mandatory that the balance sheet must be signed by 2 chartered accountants, whereas there is no such requirement under the Maharashtra Cooperative Societies Act 1960. There is no such parallel provision under the Chartered Accountants Act. It was argued, but the committee member only said that what is the prudence? It is whose balance sheet? It is the society's balance sheet. So society must sign it first, and then only the CA should sign it. So even though the Cooperative Societies Act does not state specifically that the balance sheet must be signed by office bearers first and then chartered accountants, as under the Companies Act, still the disciplinary committee has held concerned CA from Pune guilty, obviously, but he was reprimanded. He has not lost his membership. But the point is that if the law provides it should be signed by office bearers, directors, it must be signed by them first and then CA should put the signature. Howsoever the person is known to you, the directors, maybe husband and wife, doesn't matter, get both the signatures and then put your signature. That is the simple way out. In one more case, again, I had an occasion to deal with where a partnership balance sheet was signed by only 1 partner and other partner refused. In that case, the partnership deed has provided that the final account shall be signed by both the partners. So concerned CA took signature of 1 partner, and his argument, or rather, I was representing the complainant at that time. His argument before the committee was that since it was 30th September, time was not available to get the signature of a partner and to upload the balance sheet. The committee simply said that it is none of your business who has suffered the loss. The losses would not have got carried forward. Because of that, you wanted to sign it. It is incorrect. Let the client should realize the value of their own signatures. Why you have signed it first? So whenever the partners did provide that signature of 2 partners minimum, suppose there are 5 partners and there is a signature of only 2 partners, suffice to say. But if the partnership did provide that all partners shall sign the balance sheet, then do not sign unless all the partners sign the balance sheet. So as to the disputes between the directors, so source of complaint is client, then financial institutions. The financial institutions may be the banks or, 1 minute. Financial institutions. again, fortunately, I had occasion to deal with one such case, and many times it becomes very difficult for us as a counsel to argue because the mistakes are so grave, negligence is so obviously the answer is no. It was so glaring negligence. I'll just give an example where the Indian bank has filed a complaint against the chartered accountant for giving incorrect utilization certificate. You are aware that against the bank finance, the margin money is to be brought in by the borrower. And based upon the money brought in by the borrower, the bank releases the funds. In that particular case, the company gave two checks of rupees 25 crore and 8 crore, one for the machinery advance and one for the construction advance. And the checks were dated in February. At that time, it was a 6 months validity period. In the month of June, the company asked for utilization certificate from the concerned chartered accountant. The concerned chartered accountant said, gave a certificate that 90 crore is a work in progress, capital work in progress, inclusive of this 33 crores of two checks. And the certificate was issued on 31st of March. When the balance sheet of that company got finalized in the month of August, by that time, after the certificate was obtained, after the funds were received from the bank, the company simply cancelled those two checks. That means the checks were never given to the suppliers. Please note. Only you have been told that the checks have been issued and you accepted it. That is how it is. And when the balance sheet was finalized, the due cognizance of the two checks that were cancelled was taken care of, and the WIP came to 57 crore. When the company was in the renewal of their cash credit account, they were surprised that there is a certificate of 90 crore work in process, whereas the balance sheet shows only 57 crore. So when they inquired, they realized that the checks worth 33 crores were never realized. The concerned CA gave a certificate of utilization of 33 crores as margin money without realizing a single rupee out of it. So this was evidently a false certificate where the Indian bank has taken to task. So financial institutions, banks also taken to task. Many times the government is also party to it. What has happened in earlier cases, especially after Satyam, Register of Companies started going through the balance sheets, P&L account, that annual report that were filed. It was a physical filing at that time. And whenever there is a shortcoming in the annual accounts, a complaint was filed. Again, I had occasion to deal with one situation where the Register of Companies Pune filed a complaint against the CA. Now, what were the issues? Prima facie, it looks not that important. One was quantitative information was not given. Number two, in the profit and loss account, there is a dividend received, but without mentioning the tax deducted at source. What it should have been, dividend received 10,000 into bracket, TDS say 1,000 rupees or whatever the case may be. So these were the two issues, and the third one was regarding the preferential capital. Terms of redemption were not mentioned. So these are the three issues. We could argue that the quantitative information is no more required as per 2013 Act, so it is not that important or relevant. But nothing doing, the committee has held the concerned CA guilty. Fortunately, only a reprimand was issued. So in these cases, the Register of Companies had filed a complaint. In one more case, again I had occasion to deal with, Ministry of Food has filed a complaint against the CA. And the unfortunate part of that respondent, chartered accountant, is he was in practice for less than 3 months. Within first 3 months of his career, a complaint has been filed against him. He's from Mufusil area, a taluka level place. The company was engaged in, they wanted to construct cold storage facilities. And there was a scheme by the central government to grant subsidy against a capital investment. The company got a certificate from their auditor, wanted to get a certificate from their auditor about the investment in land and buildings and plant and machinery. The concerned auditor was out of station. He has gone for his annual vacations. So he advised on his telephone that his article, who had done your audit, is now practicing as a CA. So what are we going to approach him and get his certificate? The company approached that fresh chartered accountant, and the company was knowing the chartered accountant, and chartered accountant was also knowing the company because he has worked for it while doing the articleship. So he issued a certificate. At taluka level, obviously the news got spread that such and such company is going to receive a few crore rupees by way of subsidy. So one of the person from that taluka place filed a complaint with the Ministry of Food that the land is not in the name of the company at all. So the company wrote, the Ministry of Food and Food Processing made asked the company to get the land records indexed to other details as well as advocate's title report of the lands in the name of the company. Company could not produce anything because company was not the owner of the land. Now, what was the accounting entry passed? Land account debit to share application money, and thereafter share application debit to share capital. That is how the share capital was there, land was there, but the land was not in the name of the company. And even in the certificate, he has not qualified the land is in the name, is not in the name of the company. That being the case, the ministry filed a complaint against the concerned CA. The matter is still going on. Then staff members also filed a complaint. Article trainees have also filed a complaint. Please note. Article trainees have filed a complaint for non-payment of stipend. Fairly, about way long back, some 15 years back or so, one of our article students has filed a complaint that stipend was not paid regularly. The stipend at that time was something 500, 800 or something like that. And the concerned CA was paying stipend more than that. He was paying 2,500 flat, 2,500, 3,000 and 3,500. Accept the complaint at all. The committee stressed the word regularity of paying of stipend. Since the stipend was not paid for 2-3 months, last 2-3 months, he filed a complaint. So whether you have paid excess stipend earlier, it is immaterial. You have to pay stipend regularly, whatever the case may be. Then the complaints are filed also against fellow brothers, against professional brothers. One CA filing a complaint against another CA. And in such situations, there are many cases, especially relating to, number one, non-communication with the previous auditor. Most of the complaints are relating to this only. You are aware that under clause 8, there is a communication to the previous auditor if you are accepting any assignment. And most of the times, I do not know why CA forget to follow this simple procedure. Please note, the Act nowhere requires NOC, no objection certificate is not required. The law requires communication to the previous auditor. So communication is required. But unfortunately, the Council decision of 1959 required that the communication must be by way of registered post, that is by speed post or registered post acknowledgement due, or by physical submission, where you can have an acknowledgement. It has not taken into account the modern means of communication like email or with digital signature, etc., it has to be by way of registered post only. One complaint, again, I had occasion to deal with, where the complainant, the respondent CA has said that he has sent the communication to the previous auditor by a courier, DTDC courier. And we have the proof that the document was sent by courier. We could establish from the website that that particular letter or envelope was delivered to the concerned CA, but still that CA filed a complaint saying that the communication to the previous auditor was not in proper form. The committee has held him guilty. Now, of course, you are aware that during this pandemic period, the council has allowed communication by email because the courier or speed post or postal communication is not now possible. So only during this pandemic period, you can make communication to the previous auditor by email, but otherwise make the communication by registered post only, or better way to get the stamp of his office having delivered the letter, that is suffice. But communication has to be there. Then the complaint against the fellow chartered accountants can be on account of professional rivalry also. Again, it's a case concerning two chartered accountants from a district in Maharashtra, Satara, where the audit was, both were engaged in cooperative audit, and ACA realized that because of the adventures, his professional assignment of cooperative audits have declined substantially because he was entirely dependent on cooperative audit. Therefore, he filed a complaint against the B chartered accountant, but he can't file a complaint regarding the allotment of audits. He came across the balance sheet and profit and loss account of that B auditor. I don't know why such mistakes people make it. In the balance sheet and profit and loss account of B auditor, on the profit and loss account credit side, there was a machinery rent, something like 12 lakh rupees or so. And on the debit side, expenses. Please note, profit and loss account of a chartered accountant, balance sheet credit side, machinery rent, on the debit side, machinery expenses, including depreciation and so on and so forth. So I simply ask the question, have you shown this machinery rent as income from other sources for taxation purposes? The answer was no. Then my question is, why you want to show this machinery rent as the what is the intention that he has shown business income in his professional income and credited to P&L account? Obviously, he was held for guilty. So there can be complaint against other chartered accountants, or the complaint can also be from ex-partners for non-payment of regularly whatever the royalty or whatever the honorarium that you have agreed to post-retirement not being paid, for which the complaints have been received by the institute. Then many times private complaints are arising out of ego or rivalry for arm twisting purposes. A private complaint, like the one I had given you example of, payment, non-payment of rent, the concerned landlord has received the payment with fine of 10,000 rupees, the company paid the rent. Nonetheless, you want to take the case against the chartered accountant, who was not employee of the company, was a signatory or director of the company. So private complaints mainly out of ego or rivalry for arm twisting purposes. So there are various types of complaints who are complainants. Now, if you look at these complaints, we can analyze the reasons for such complaints. And the first and foremost reason for such complaint is members do many things in too much of good faith. This is applicable to all of us. We do so many things in too much of good faith. Many times the client informs on telephone, client says orally, a client says that I will take the signature of other chartered accountants. We act in good faith, and this is the first place where a negligence gets established. So members do many things in too much of good faith. Second reason is lack of basic documentation. Lack of basic documentation in sense, if we are doing the audit of a company, at least one should have a copy of the memorandum articles of association. If he is doing the audit of a partnership firm, he should have a copy of the partnership deed. The one case I had told about the signing of balance sheet by both the partners, I was representing the complainant, and when I produced the partnership deed to a committee that the partnership deed requires the signature of both the partners, the committee asked the respondent chartered accountants, when the partnership deed requires signature by both the partners, why you have not taken the signature? And well, the concerned CA informed that he didn't have a copy of the partnership deed. See, when you're doing the audit of a partnership firm, you must keep a copy of the partnership deed with you, go through it, especially the relationship between the partners, whether it requires signature of both or not, or whether if there are 5 partners, whether you require signature of all the partners or only 2 partners or 3 partners, whatever the case may be. Then work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. Have a noting of it. For example, if there is any tax return you are filing it, the concerned client tells that you go ahead with this or you claim this expenditure, I will have necessary proof of that. But subsequently, at the time of assessment, he is not in a position and he starts blaming that you have given the wrong advice or you have not taken proper care. At that time, we should have proper documentation. You should have taken down while taking a decision, why you are taking a particular decision, based upon which case law, based upon which provisions of law, as you have understood. And then subsequently, if he says that, then we should be in a position to inform that this was already told to you and they have taken conscious decision to file the return or to complete the accounts based upon the available information. So you are responsible and not the concerned third party. The next is most important is friend test of ink. I am repeating, friend test of ink is stronger than strongest of memories. We try to keep everything in mind, but with the progress in age or with the simple time, many times we forget what is the basis or what is the reasoning for that. So best is have it noted down in your working papers as to a particular treatment you had given for a particular accounting issue or for a particular auditing issue. Write it down. It will help you subsequently. That's why it says that faint test of ink, even if the ink has become faint after a few years, it is more stronger. It will be beneficial for us to prove subsequently that you have taken adequate care and skill or reasonable care and skill. Because many times whenever the complaint is against the CA, against the auditing non-application or not following the accounting standards or auditing standard, the committee invariably calls for auditing papers. And if the auditing papers are incomplete, if auditing papers do not carry these notes, it is very difficult to argue that you have taken reasonable care and skill while doing the audit. So pen test of ink is stronger than the strongest of memories. Then quality is compromised due to seasonal pressures of meeting deadlines. All of us are going through this patch. In the last 7-8 years or so, because of e-filing, because of GST, or because of ROC filing, we have to follow deadlines. And deadlines, if we do not follow deadline, then you have to pay 100 rupees, 200 rupees fine for the delay. So in such cases, we are tempted to bypass, or we work under pressure, and in the process, we make a mistake. Again, I'll give an example I had occasion to deal with. In one case, a chartered accountant, a complaint was filed against a CA that he has not signed, he has not taken care, or he has acted dishonestly. He was hand in glove with the management by signing Form 2, return of allotment. All of us are aware that Form number 2 is for return of allotment to be filed by company to the Register of Companies. It was Form 2, not physical submission, but even e-filing. In that case, company gave her details of the company. Please note that CA was not the auditor of the company, was not tax consultant. He was referred to by someone ex-person. So that company approached him, gave him the resolution that these shares are to be allotted to these many persons. He simply put his digital signature, uploaded the form, and one of the share allottees filed a complaint with the institute saying that I have paid rupees 2 lakhs to the company as a loan and not as share application money. So when the matter went to the committee simply asked us, where is the share application form? Because the form mentions that I have gone through the records of the company and then I have put my signature. There was no share application form. There was only a board resolution. So obviously he was held guilty. So this is the situation where, because that was his 30th day and the company wants to file the Form 2 without making any delay, so the company approached nearby chartered accountant without going through the record. Today is the last date. Therefore, he put his digital signature, uploaded the form. Now, for which he got some 500 rupees as fees, and for that 500 rupees, he has spent almost 25,000-30,000 rupees toward the disciplinary proceedings. So just imagine the situation where quality is compromised due to seasonal pressures of meeting deadlines. It happens especially so also in case of tax audits. There are cases where department has filed complaints against the tax auditor. I know for certain there is one case in Bombay where the department has filed a complaint against the chartered accountant saying that the brought forward losses have not been correctly disclosed. What happens in practice? Suppose there is a brought forward loss, there is a loss of say 10 lakhs for assessment year 17-18. During the last financial year, the assessment took place and the loss is reduced from 10 lakhs to say 8 lakh rupees. Now we are filing the return for AY 2021, and if we are not taken care properly, most of us are using tax softwares. So 17-18 loss of 10 lakh rupees will continue even for 2021 if there is no profit in between. So the brought forward loss of 17-18 of rupees 10 lakhs continue even for 2021. Department has said that this 10 lakh loss rupees has reduced to 8 lakh rupees on account of assessment. So tax auditor is negligent in giving these figures. All of us are aware that in tax audit report we have to certify, we have to state the brought forward losses. So brought forward losses are 8 lakhs as against it was disclosed at 10 lakhs, and mainly on account of tax software we use it. So after assessment, that figure should have been reduced properly. It was not reduced. The committee has held him guilty. The only thing, reprimand was issued because the benefit of that 10 lakhs brought forward loss was not taken by the assessee. Then many times tax consideration override accounting and auditing principles. This happens in most of the cases. Let us accept that all the issues we look from income tax angle rather than from accounting or auditing angle. So we give precedence to tax considerations rather than accounting and auditing considerations. In that case, if the accounts do not disclose true and fair picture, and if a bank or institution or government files a complaint, we cannot say that in tax laws it is permissible. It may not be permissible of accounting laws, accounting principles. That will not help. Then lack of communication skills, difficulty in saying no to unjustified demands. This is again one of the most difficult. It is easy to tell but difficult to follow. Lack of communication skills. Chartered accountants unfortunately lack in proper communication. Many times drafting is not proper, which may lead to multiple meanings, unintended meanings. Besides, whenever we should be in a position to say no, we do not say no, we say, let's see, dekhenge, chalta hai, let me see, then I'll let you know, like that. If you are sure that this is not possible, have guts to say no. That will help you in the long run. So, no to unjustified demands. Now, why all these have taken to? One of the reasons given is greed. Many times, it so happens that greed makes you to make mistakes, and unreasonably high stakes are involved. I'm not blaming young chartered accountants. I'm not blaming any young or old chartered accountant, but it has been experienced that many times once he becomes a CA, he wants to become rich as early as possible. You have to put in n number of years, substantial years, to withstand yourself in the profession. Then you can demand the fees you quote, but do not become greedy. Thereby go on accepting as many audits, as many consultations, or as many returns that will overlook the basic issues of accounting, auditing, and negligence. Then constraints of resources. One of the reasons is constraint in resources. One is infrastructure. All of you will agree that it is just impossible nowadays to have one's own office, and then start practice, because the office premises, minimum A1 area is of 300 square feet is essential, may cost you minimum 40-50 lakhs with installments, EMI and interest. It is not possible to survive in the nascent practice because it has become competitive, and that's why the many times chartered go for undercutting of fees. They accept lower fees than the established one, and in the process overlook many things and may come in trouble later on. Manpower. This is being faced every one of us, that we are not having sufficient manpower in the form of article trainees, or if we employ commerce graduates or postgraduates, then many times our offices become their schools. They are with us for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and after get experience, leave the office and go elsewhere. That means, in short, apli shala hote baki kai hot nahi. So they are there only to learn, but we do not get anything from them after having received substantial experience. Then again, library. I have seen many chartered accountants practice based upon reckoner without referring to the Income Tax Act or the Companies Act. The basic Bible for our profession is Chartered Accountants Act or the Companies Act or the Income Tax Act. At least have one copy every year. We may not require or may not use n number of things, n number of various books on the profession. Besides, nowadays, the clients have also become smart, especially so they can also Google it. Chartered accountants, especially salaried persons from IT professions, they believe more on Google than their consultant chartered accountant, and they try to argue upon that. So we should also be prepared for such eventuality. You should be more smarter than the concerned chartered consultant. Then corruption. Corruption is one more aspect where for fresh chartered accountant feel that it is felt that other CAs are doing well because they are managers rather than chartered accountants. But that is the fact of life. We have to accept it. I can only add that which way to follow, good way or bad way. It is your choice. But good way will lead you to the goal in the end. Bad way will certainly lead to somewhere else. That is 100% sure. Then legislative incompetency. This has also led to problems in practice. The laws are made, circulars are issued, and many times they are so confusing, we do not know what is to be done, and that makes us more lethargic. In a sense, we do not want to keep update ourselves in the current situations, in the current profession. So legislative incompetency. Blind faith on software, no mind in work, blind faith, it's really so. In a sense, all of us are using either Winman or Taxbase or what are tax softwares are available. It's like greedy in a sense. We put the data in one end, get the XML file at the other end, we upload it without caring for it. So whether the software developed has got any bugs, whether the software, because who are the persons developing the software, they themselves are chartered, but still there can be many mistakes. All of us are aware that when the e-filing has started way back in 2006-07, there were problems regarding depreciation. All of us are aware of it. If the depreciation as per income tax and depreciation as per books of accounts were same, we had a practice of not showing anything. But when the tax returns were uploaded, at that time the system took depreciation from the P&L extract, added it to net profit, and depreciation as per rules not being claimed, the benefit was not given. So all of us received huge tax demands. Later on it was rectified, but because they realized that this type of adjustments are being, this type of disclosure is from one commissionerate only, from Pune commissionerate only, so they gave us a leave. In a sense, we have a blind faith on software. We do not put our mind into the tax computations, especially in case of 234 ABC interest. Even a fresh chartered accountants do not know how to calculate ABC interest, because for last 10 years or so, we are using tax softwares. If we change any figure, if we add any income, the ABC interest gets calculated automatically. So that being the case, it is a blind faith on software. Then compliance machine. All chartered accountants have become a compliance machine rather than we have little time to put our brain or mind into an issue. We try to be a tax compliant or just fill up the forms, upload the forms, that's all. Then cut paste practice, especially in case of audit reports, auditing. There are many cases where complaints have been received. The last balance sheet is simply date is changed, figures are changed, but in the particular column, the data which is required to be changed is not changed. For example, the previous year figures where the capital was increased from 1 lakh to 5 lakh rupees. Even after such increase in capital from 1 lakh to 5 lakh, in the number of shares issued, that figure remain unchanged for next 3 years. Because it's a cut paste practice. We just copy it, change the current year's figures, change the date, and we sign it, it goes ahead. But without taking care of in the particular column, if there are changes in the particular column, that should be adequately done. Then indispensability in society. This is a reality of life. We cannot prove that we are indispensable. In a sense, if something goes wrong, if the doctors are beaten by patients in the hospital, they can go on strike. If a lawyer is attacked, the lawyers can go on strike, they will not attend the courts. So the cognizance of this is immediately taken by the government. However, if a chartered accountant decides to go on strike, no one will take care of it, or no one is bothered about it. For the simple reason, we do not have even a nuisance value. If all of us go on strike, nothing will happen. That is also one of the reasons that we chartered accountants feel that to survive, we have to do something. We cannot take the client to task. Then many times, the last one, showmanship. Average sincere practicing CA has lost his identity. There are many such cases we come across where young chartered accountants feel that many times on showmanship, on account of better presentation, on account of using good language, all these things overweigh. I can simply use the word marketing of your professional services has made sincere practicing chartered accountant losing his identity. He feels that he cannot do his own marketing. All of us, let us agree that we fail in marketing ourselves. That's a reality. Now, as to the remedies, whatever all these 15, 16 points I have just discussed, these are suggestive of remedies itself. That is one. Then one more thing that has come to notice, that risky audits are being signed by juniors or some other chartered accountants. Please avoid that. At least we, as a senior chartered accountant, should ensure that risky audits or the audit which you would not have signed should not be got signed from other chartered accountants, putting his neck. Audit should be conducted without fear or favor. It is good to say, it is easy to say, but difficult to practice. All of us, let us agree with that. And purpose and coverage of audit. This is where we lack. That's why we call it documentation. When we are doing the tax audit, we should be concerned with tax audit provision, that is the provisions of Income Tax Act only. When we are doing the audit under the Companies Act, then we should be concerned with the provisions of the accounting and auditing standard or the audit of a partnership firm or any other entity. If you are doing the audit of a charitable trust, then we should be concerned with the provisions of Trust Act. Now, we try to apply taxation principles in the accounts or auditing of a company or a trust. That means purpose and coverage of audit must be ensured, and it should be need-based reporting. Whatever is required only need to be reported. It is required that there should be counseling between complainant and respondent. If possible, there should be both the persons should be brought on the table. If there is a complaint, try to minimize it, try to avoid it. Just to give an example, where for non-communication with the previous auditor, a complaint was being filed. So we tried to call, myself was there, Dhaure sir was there, to bring both the complainant and the respondent to a common table, that what purpose or what objective you are going to achieve by filing a complaint against your fellow chartered accountant. But unfortunately, he filed a complaint, the matter went ahead. But there should be counseling between complainant and respondent, especially so when both are from our professions only. Then arbitration between members, inter se, and between member and article trainees. This is to be introduced by ICAI. ICAI has said that there will be arbitration between chartered accountant and article trainee, and arbitration between two chartered accountant, complainant, respondent. If it holds good in the long run, that will be beneficial. Now, I can add, if time permits, I think it is 6:30, I'll take another 10-15 minutes just to have some experience I had occasion to deal with almost 25-30 cases where I represented as the counsel for chartered accountants from Pune, Mumbai, even from out of Maharashtra also. The complainants, what type of complaints I had occasion to deal with? Some of them I have told in my speech itself, but some of them are just, I don't know how such negligence takes place. It's unbelievable that how a person has done this. Few examples. In one case from Nasik, a chartered accountant, a senior most chartered accountant, I can say, senior even to me also, that he was auditor of a charitable trust. A complaint was filed by State Bank of India against the CA, saying that we had given a loan of 90 crore to a trust. It is not being reflected in the balance sheet of a trust. When I got the complaint from that respondent CA, I was taken aback. If the 90 crore loan is given by the bank and if it is not shown in the balance sheet, then where it has been disbursed. So I called for the balance sheet of last 2 years. I can tell the specific dates. For 31st March 2010, 90 crore loan from State Bank of India and Punjab National Bank in consortium loan was there. For 31st March 11, in the balance sheet, loan was not there. So obviously I got surprised in the sense that whether you have taken the loan from some other bank and paid off the SBI loan. The loan was not paid off. What they said that the trust has taken the loan from the bank for rupees 300 crore. 90 crore is a past disbursement. There was a dispute between the trust and the bank. So they did not release further funds, and because of that, our medical college project could not be completed. So the trust, please note, filed a complaint against the bank with the Nasik District Court. Please note, just filed a complaint for damages of 250 crore rupees. So the accounting entry was passed, adjusting 90 crore liabilities, and the balance sheet asset side shows 160 crore receivable from State Bank of India. Just on the basis of complaint being filed, a simple question, what about accounting standard 9 as to the revenue recognition? By simply filing a complaint, even though there was no court decision, if the Nasik District Court had given a decision, okay, 250 crore is the damages payable to the trust, I can say that I have got a court order. But by simply filing a complaint, filing a case with the district court, you are passing the accounting entries. Now, what is the remedy? What is the argument you can make before the council? In another case, again, only 1 or 2 cases I have fought against the chartered accountant. Otherwise, I have taken it purposefully to fight the cases only in favor of chartered accountants and not against CA. But if I am convinced that the CA has made a glaring mistake or has cheated the concerned client, then I have taken. There are only 2 such cases. In one such cases, sales of 2009 were shown in the balance sheet of 2011. Sales of 2010 were shown in P&L account of 2012. His written submission is sales of 9 or 10 were shown in 11 or 12. That is sufficient. What does it matter? If that is the case, then why do we prepare accounts for 31st March every year? And worst part is, a particular property, landed property, whose market value was 120 lakhs, was sold for 60 lakhs. Agreement value was 60 lakhs. Stamp duty value was 120 lakhs. The accounting entry was passed for 120 lakhs. That means the profit of that partnership firm was shown more by 60 lakhs. That means the firm was required to pay more tax for that year. And in the next year, is he going to claim 60 lakhs as a bad debt? Because the agreement is for 60 lakhs only. The buyer will pay only 60 lakhs. Now that 60 lakhs agreement value, 120 lakhs stamp duty value, that 50C is for taxation purposes, nothing to do with accounts at all. So such glaring mistakes we people make it. And please note, using the word we people make it. I'm not saying that you people make it. We make it because of various reasons. I was fortunate in the last 37 years. I'm not saying that I have not made a mistake. I must have made a mistake, but I was fortunate that I was not caught. That is the only thing I can say. So probably you are not caught so far doesn't mean that you have not made a mistake. Doer is human. Everyone makes a mistake. But please, as far as possible, minimize our mistakes. Try to eliminate the mistakes. Do not get caught into the disciplinary proceedings. It's really mind-playing game. It disturbs your peace, tranquility, sleep for minimum 2 to 3 years. So in concluding, I can only have one thing. If we become good human beings and then the professionals, I repeat, if we become good human beings and then the professionals, the code of ethics will flow from within and will not have to be imposed from outside. So take care as far as possible. Do not tempted. Do not have too much of faith on clients, how far he is near to you. He is your client for last 30, 35 years, but whenever he is in trouble, he is going to take you to the court. So take care. That's all I want to say. Whether this forum allows any queries, if yes, I'm happy to reply. Abhishek?
Sir, good evening. CA Karan this side. Sir, Abhishek sir, I guess he has left due to some technical issues.
Okay,
Sir, we
no
can
problem.
take few questions from the member.
Okay.
Sir, if you can see the chat box, there is one question from Sanjay Kumar Gupta sir. He is asking, a CA formed the HUF and all the family members of HUF are CA. Can they provide the consultancy under HUF?
No. See, only individual can be a member of the institute, so only individual can be a practicing member. HUF cannot have a practice.
Dear members, if you have any other queries, we still have around 10-15 minutes. Like sir is there with us for another 10-15 minutes. So you can just type in the chat box, or otherwise you can just raise your hand using the feature in Zoom, and I'll just unmute you so that you can talk directly. Sir, in continuation to the previous HUF question, Mr. Prashant is asking whether same is applicable if they form a private limited company.
Chartered accountants can form a private limited company. They can be director simpliciter. They cannot be employees of the company, and you cannot do the audit of as a company. You can do consultancy, no problem, but you should not be employee of that company. You can be director simpliciter, for which you do not require approval of the institute. It is automatic under automatic route. It is allowed.
So the next question was by Mr. Arvind, which said, can a practicing CA be a promoter director?
Yes, he can be promoted director, no problem. As I told you, only thing, he should not be employee of the company. He should not be managing director or working director of the company. If that is the case, then he will not be considered in whole-time employment, whole-time practice.
So one question from Mr. Surendra Mandlecha. Can CA family do derivatives trading in HUF DMAT?
HUF DMAT. There are many CAs who are also doing derivative trading in their individual capacity. That issue is not resolved as yet, frankly speaking. Because again, it will depend upon the facts of the case, how much time you are devoted, how many transactions you have taken place in a year. All these things you have to justify that your professional time is more than the time required for these purposes. But per se, HF, I find no difficulty in that. Because in HF, you can say very well that someone else was doing it.
Sir, should I go on to the next question?
Yes, yes.
Sir, Mr. Sanjay had asked the HUF question earlier, the consulting point. In continuation to that, he has another question. Can they provide the consultancy under HUF as well as they are doing under practicing firm also, in addition to the firm?
In addition to firm, in the name of HUF, now which sort of consultation? That is the issue. Because as a professional, either a tax consultant, you require registration with the tax authorities as an ITP. Then you have to be an individual only. If you want to do, say, accounting work in the name of HUF, but again, HUF is doing the accounting work and individually you are doing the audit work, that is not permissible.
Mr. Sanjay, if you would like to speak, I have unmuted you from my end, so you can just unmute and you can go further to ask any question related to the HUF part. Abhishek sir, are you there? Have you joined?
Yes, I'm there, Karan.
Sir, I guess the questions are complete from the members side. I could not see any fresh questions on the chat nor the hands which are raised. So I think you can.
Sanjay sir is there. Let him ask the question, then we will conclude.
Vijay sir, one member.
Yes, Sanjay sir, over to you.
I think it's closed or stopped. I cannot listen anything.
Sanjay sir, your voice is not audible.
Maybe Sanjay sir, you can connect with us offline.
Yeah. Just Abhishek, give him my email ID.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Are there any questions? Should we conclude the session? Okay. Yes. Thank you, Vijay sir, for your wonderful session on professional ethics. We have covered most of the things. Dear members, we are going to have one more session that is planned on the 24th. Uh, Regarding to this, CM Mangesh Kindre sir would be taking that session. As you are aware that before 30th June, 2 hours of professional ethics learning you have to complete. So that's why Pune branch has taken have lined up these sessions. So I'd like to formally thank Sharad Vajay sir for taking out time and enlightening us with your experience in professional ethics, how what CA member should do, what precaution he should take. Thank you so much, sir. We are having you for the second time. Yeah, just earlier in the month of March, we had your session at Pune branch. We are fortunate to have you for the second time in a row. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you all the members for joining. Whatever questions you have, please, if you can write us to @CPE Pune, cp@puneici.org. We can convey those questions to Vijay sir, and maybe we can have answers from him. So I would like to repeat the email ID, cpe@puneici.org. Please note down the. I will also make it. I'll drop that in chat box for everyone's convenience. cp@puneici.org. So whatever questions you have, we will definitely get it answered. We'll try to get it answered from Vijay sir. With this, we conclude today's session. I would like to thank once again Vijay sir, all the respected members, those who have joined. I would also like to thank Karan for taking out question answer session. So with this, we conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.